Howdy, y'all. Jeez. Hey guys, you're watching Poot's Garage. This week we're gonna go over some stuff on this truck. Again. We got truck parts. Don't look too close, I'll go over all this later. What's up guys, you like my Terminator eye? Let me fix that real quick. Alright, so before we get too deep into this video, let's get to the maps. For anybody new here, every week I'll ask everybody where you're watching from, and you let me know and I'll put a pin on the map on your location. So represent your city, your state, your country, whatever, let me know. Alright, first off we gotta jump to the world map. We got Athens, Greece. That's pretty cool, that's a long ways away. Next, they are watching from Montreal, Canada. Next, coming from the upper left corner, Lake Stevens, Washington. I believe I've already got one there, so we'll shove her right up in that area. Next, we got our first Idaho, Boise. Next is our correction from last week. It was supposed to be Iowa, Louisiana. So we'll get that on there. Then we head over to Deming, New Mexico. And last is Dolgeville, New York. That's kinda doesn't really have a good spot on here, so I gotta guess. Looks like it's around there. Thank you everybody. We're doing great with these pins, so keep it up. Keep letting me know where you're watching from. I'll keep putting those pins up. I wanna see this map get solid red, so that'd be pretty cool. With that, I got something else we gotta do real quick. Talk to the camera. Next order of business is the stickers. I know everybody was asking me about these. So, I bought envelopes, bought a ton of stamps. Stamps are more expensive than the stickers. So, it's coming out of my dime, so I want everybody to have these for free. So, just to help promote the channel and whatnot. So I'm gonna need something from you guys. Number one, I need you to be a subscriber. So if you're not, subscribe already. Two, please like the video. I have no way of tracking that, so I don't know if you actually hit the like button or not. And then three, I'm gonna need your address to send it to you. So you can either put your address in the comments below, or if that is, you know, doesn't make you comfortable or whatever, I created an email specifically for this channel, and that will be pootsgarage@gmail.com. Pretty easy, right? So I'll try to put a link or something in the description, or at least the email down there, so you can copy and paste it and whatever. But yeah, so we got stickers. So let me know if you want one, and I'll mail them out. Your comment doesn't even have to be I want a sticker. It can be your location on the map. And then yeah, as long as you send me your mailing address one way or the other, then I'll send one out to you. All right, now what everybody wants to see, truck parts. I forgot to mention when I was filming this earlier, so let's do this right now. You'll notice the parts are all painted now. It won't be later. Anyways, I ordered all this stuff from Offroad Designs. I want to give them big credit because they're killing it in this little segment. But I think this full-size wheeler segment, whatever you call it, is not that crazy. But they make a ton of awesome parts for, you know, all these big axles and the Chevys and all the cool stuff. So if you're looking for parts, check them out. They are awesome, and they're awesome to talk to. I called them and they know their stuff. You can ask them exactly what you need, and they probably got some sort of heavy duty component. You can check out their website, offroaddesigns.com. And yeah, I just want to make sure I give them credit before we got too deep into this. Camping hat. We'll just wear it anyways. So, as many of you know, this is my 1982 Chevy K30. It's relatively beat up. It's a pretty rough truck, and we're building this into a trail rig. This basic truck has kind of always been my dream truck. 1982 was my birth year, so that's pretty cool. It was just kind of a bonus when I found it. But I always, like through high school, I had to have a 1-ton Chevy truck. I wanted the single wheel, you know, no dually. Had to be the regular cab, and I wanted the big block. I wanted a manual transmission with the SM465 transmission and a 205 transfer case, because all those components were like basically the most badass truck that you could have at the time, you know. It's the beefiest parts that pretty much ever came in trucks. You know, it's got the Kingpin Dana 60 front end, it's got the full float 14 bolt in the rear. You just can't get any stronger than that until you start going into, you know, heavy duty trucks. And as you can guess, this truck has it all. It checks all the boxes. The only problem was when I bought it, it doesn't have the Dana 60 front end, which we have fixed. So let's go over everything we got going on. We got a whole bunch of parts that showed up. We're still missing a couple things, but we'll go through everything that we're doing. And I kind of got to do this now because I want to start painting parts and I want to show things before, you know, I start messing with things. And before we get to the new parts, I just want to go over, these are the axles that I spent a lot of time cleaning up and just repainting. These are out of a military, what is it? M1008, I believe it is, the 1 ton or 1 1/4 ton they call them, military Chevy trucks. So these have 456 gears front and rear, and they have like a Detroit type locker in the rear. I don't know if it's actually made by Detroit, but pretty stout unit. So they're pretty much ready to rock. I kind of cleaned everything up, painted everything. I gotta obviously do some reassembly and buy a bunch of other parts for them, but that's what's gonna be going under the truck when we do all the suspension. All right, we got all the parts laid out here. Doesn't look like a whole lot kind of laid out here. We are missing the leaf springs still, so obviously there'd be 4 giant leaf springs in the mix here. Still waiting on those. Hopefully have those in the next, I don't know, 1 to 4 weeks. I'm kind of counting on those showing up soon. But for now, I got to get going on the rest of this stuff. So it might not look like much. A lot of what we're doing right now is we're improving the geometry of just about everything from the steering to the suspension. So we'll go over all that as we go here. And then we'll go over what the truck currently is looking like underneath. It's pretty sad under there. So let's get started. So what we'll do is I'll go over everything real quick, just to let you know what we're doing, and then we'll try and show you on the truck how each part is going to improve. So starting at the front here, we have a very long shock. It's a 12-inch travel shock. These are front shock mount extensions. That adds about, I don't know, quite a bit. I have to measure it. We have a new PSC steering box with hydraulic assist, which we're not going to use yet. There's a steering box brace. We got the Pitman arm. This is crossover steering plus high steer. And then these are the arms for that attach to the top of the axle. And then we have U-bolts. We have some hardware. We have stainless steel brake lines. These are the shackles for the front. These are an upgraded front shackle mount on the frame itself. This is an upgraded version, heavier duty. We got a bunch of bushings, more bushings. And let's head to the rear. We have more long travel shocks. This is a U-bolt flip kit, and these are the U-bolts. So we're going to be flipping the U-bolts on the axle. These here are the brackets for the rear shackle flip kit, and those are the shackles. And over here on the workbench, we got our rear disc brake conversion kit. I don't remember if I've gone over this at all yet, so there's that. I'm already off to a bad start. I got to show you some painted parts. I was supposed to have filmed this, but apparently I forgot to push record 2 weeks ago when I did this. So, first component is the crossover steering. This is going to change the steering geometry, and basically it crosses the steering over from the steering box on the driver's side all the way to the passenger side, where right now the steering box is connected directly to the driver's side. So it's like going from really short arms for steering to really long arms. And then the second component we're doing because of all that is the high steer. This is a high steer tie rod. This is moving the tie rod from kind of the middle of the axle up high above it to keep it out of the way of rocks and whatever. And in order to connect those steering bars or rods or tie rods, whatever you want to call them, these are the new top plates for the Kingpin Dana 60 front axle. These are really nice machined units. They're so heavy, I'm guessing they're stainless. And the last component to be able to achieve that is the steering box itself. So I know I've showed this thing before. We got this really nice PSC steering box. It's got billet caps, top and bottom, front to back, and it's pre-drilled right here for hydraulic assist ram steering if I want to add that later. If the big tires turn out to be too much for the stock system. But this is a really nice unit. They got their own casting on the boxes and everything. The reason I have to do this is because the two-wheel drive steering box, it's got splines on the shaft where the four-wheel drives are a little different. You can't just reclock the pitman arm that you need. You know, you got to move the pitman arm to be able to connect it to a different spot. So that's that. Let's check out now. I'll show you on the truck what it's like. So to help explain how crossover steering works, this is us looking at the steering box. This is the driver's side. Obviously, the box mounts to the outside of the frame on these. And just about every component that I'm replacing to do the crossover needs to be replaced anyways on this truck. So it's kind of like an upgrade, but also needing replacement parts. So this is great for me. So obviously replacing the steering box. Now you notice your pitman arm comes out the side, goes this way, and then it's got, I can't remember what you call this, drag link? I guess the drag link goes straight back to top of the knuckle, which has the S-shaped arm coming off the top of the knuckle there. So I guess this would be called a push-pull steering. This pitman arm is pushing and pulling, and that's causing the wheel to turn. And so everything happens on here on the driver's side, and then you just have a tie rod going across, and that does the passenger side. Now what this does is that arm is so short there that when you start lifting and doing things to these suspensions, that arm is just, it's going to be changing angles so much when the suspension moves, and that adds a lot of bump steer and kind of not very good geometry. You know, it's okay in a stock truck, but once you start modifying things, it's just not ideal. So what the crossover does is I have to get a new steering box, a two-wheel drive box, so I can use the pitman arm that I got to run straight back. That'll go now sideways. So the pitman arm will be going back here, and then once it goes back there, that bent-shaped arm, obviously this sway bar is going to go bye-bye. That arm will connect from the pitman arm all the way to the other side. So when you got a longer arm, it's not going to be changing geometry as much on you when the suspension moves. And then we'll still have a tie rod going all the way across. Now I also opted to do high steer, so I can do it and leave this tie rod the way it is down low, but I'm doing high steer, which is actually going to move the steering above. I believe it goes above the spring now, so it's going to be all up out of the way, you know, out of the way of damage, and just kind of a cleaner look altogether. So that's going to be really cool to see. Next, let's talk shocks. So on top of having just a longer shock in general, because you know you're lifting the suspension, we're also going to be doing extended shock mounts. Now these, I'll give you a quick little measurement because I haven't even measured them yet. From the middle of the top hole where the shock will mount to where, I don't know, in between the holes where the old shock probably mounts on the frame, it's 12 inches. So this alone is going to give us a 12-inch longer shock. So longer shocks allow you to be able to have more wheel travel. Now these do have a Ford. Oh boy, they got Ford part numbers on them. I believe this is I think I've seen these before. It's a common thing. I forget if they're Super Duty or whatnot, but it's just a real nice, basic, heavy-duty bracket that can be probably adapted to a lot of different things just because it's so easy. And the shocks we're actually using are these Bilstein B8, what is it, 5125? I don't know a whole lot about Bilsteins. I didn't actually research them at all. I haven't actually researched shocks in years. I don't even know what's going on. Besides, I was gonna buy some Foxes for the Ram, but those fell through. But they are really nice shocks. So these are them. Got this nice machined body on them. I've never used Bilsteins before, so this will be kind of cool. These are kind of their middle of the line recommended shock to use for this type of application. I can go more expensive and get the big Fox shocks, or you know, you can even go crazy and get like, you know, reservoirs and stuff like that, but I don't need all that. I'm not doing any high speed stuff on this. Or you can go cheaper and get kind of the standard off-road, you know, I don't know, Rancho or Tough Country or whoever, you know, every lift company makes their own shocks, but these are supposed to be pretty nice. And to give you an idea of what these, you know, longer shock mounts are doing, this is the passenger side looking forward on the front axle. So you can see our shock mounts to the axle, obviously, and it goes up, and it actually ends right there, right on the side of the frame. It just goes to a stud basically, that little bracket right there. So that alone is a very short shock. That entire shock is probably 12 inches long the way it sits right there. It's not much. You can see the shock body is only probably 6 to 8 inches long, I'm guessing. Now we're doing a 5-inch lift, so that would make that, you know, 5 inches longer, but that's still nothing, you know, nothing to write home about. So the shock mount itself, the new one that we're gonna put on, kind of peel this flap back here. You can see that's the old shock mount. I don't know if I have to take that old mount off or not. I have to read the instructions on all that. But that's basically where it's gonna be mounting to on the frame. And we come under the hood here, and you can see our shock is mounted to the frame down there. So I assume we're gonna have to cut a little bit of this away, and that shock mount's gonna come way up in here. I'm guessing it's gonna be, God, who knows, it's gonna be way up here. It's gonna be cool. So you'll see the shock all the way up into the engine compartment. And of course it'll do the same on this side. We just have a steering shaft that's makes things a little more crowded. Obviously there's a lot of small stuff. I don't need to go over that, like U-bolts, until we get to the rear U-bolts, because those are a little different. And then we have, you know, stainless steel brake lines. Everybody's seen those, right? And last, before we can show off springs, which we don't even have yet, is the actual, like, where the springs are gonna mount. So these are the rear shackles. These are the Off-Road Designs. They're super thick, real heavy duty units. Really like those. I don't know if they're longer. I'll get the tape measure out in a minute and measure those. But then the other big upgrade we're doing just for this section is these are the shackle mounts for the rear of the frame where the spring mounts. This is what goes to the frame itself. This is a lot heavier duty unit, and it uses a better bushing setup than the stock setup. So let me show you why we're doing that. This is our rear shackle for the frame. And as you can see, it's extremely rusty for one. My shackle is actually pretty much resting on the frame. I bet it's touching right there. It's not really supposed to do that. Come on, focus in. The reason they're doing that is because the bushings up above wear out really easily on these, and so the whole thing just kind of moves upward. And then as your spring wears out, which mine is obviously worn out, it's got a huge negative arch to it. It's pushing the shackle into the frame and doing all sorts of goofy things. So we're gonna upgrade that mount I just showed you. Actually mounts to the other side of the frame, which I can't show you because it's actually gonna be a nightmare to install to begin with, because my exhaust headers are so close. I might actually have to take the headers off. We'll see. But yeah, it's gonna mount to the inside of the frame, and that's gonna put a different type of bushing in there, which doesn't wear out so fast. I wanna say the bolts are bigger, and it uses a polyurethane bushing and all that stuff, so they won't wear out and sag like that. I think that's kind of a weak factory thing. You'll see a lot of square body Chevys doing that. They'll just be sitting on the frame there. And as for the length on these new shackles, I'm kind of curious. So we'll go center hole to center hole is about 4 inches or so. And the new shackles, center hole to center hole, is 4.5. So it's actually gonna give us a 1/4 inch lift. So that kind of covers the front end. So we're improving the steering geometry, the shock geometry, and we're just kind of strengthening up a lot of weak points in the general stock setup. So let's move to the rear. So shocks for the rear are the exact same shocks as the front. So that makes it easy because the part numbers are all the same. So it's I believe it's a 12-inch travel shock. Makes it easy to swap parts or order parts and get new parts, whatever. One nice change we're doing is called the U-bolt flip. This is gonna flip the U-bolts from hanging down where the threads will get damaged to being upright, so that you just have the round part to slide over things. And to accomplish that, you have these, oh boys, are heavy, big old heavy duty plates. These will go on, I believe, on top of the axle now, on top of the spring actually. We'll show you the old setup right now. So this is our rusty rear end. You can see how low our current U-bolts are hanging. That's not ideal. It's really not ideal to have anything hanging down. And then they have if you can see with the lack of lighting, it's a square style U-bolt. So it goes over the top of the spring and comes down, and then it has this factory plate underneath. Now the new one is going to get rid of that lower plate, and the U-bolts will just strap around the axle itself. And then the new plates go on top of the spring, which is I would consider that more a conventional style. So yeah, get rid of all that stuff hanging down and kind of helps you out a little bit, less damage and easier to get parts apart. You know, if I were to smack that on a rock, those threads, good luck getting them nuts off again. And the last major component is going to be the rear shackle flip. So these are new rear brackets that go on the frame. So we got to take the old ones off, which is going to probably be a nightmare. And then we have new shackles. Shackles are probably longer. And these brackets obviously change the geometry a lot. So instead of shackles being upright on the factory setup like that, we're actually flipping it all over so the shackles will hang and all you'll have down below is the spring. So that'll kind of increase the rear ground clearance a little bit, and then it's supposed to, the geometry alone of doing this is supposed to be a lot better for off-road and different things. All right, and there you can see this is the stock, obviously. You see how the bracket is underneath, and the shackle goes upward, and then the spring is basically hanging, you know, up. And almost like the truck's hanging down on the spring. So we're gonna reverse that. The spring will obviously move down a little bit, and then we'll have the shackle hanging down even further. I can tell the shackles are longer too, so that's all kind of part of the lift. And one of the final components is this rear disc brake kit. I think I've gone over all this already. We got the longer studs in here. We got the caliper brackets that are already painted. I did that myself. And then we're using the Cadillac calipers so that we still have a parking brake. So that kind of sums up everything we're gonna be doing. I'm doing this video now because a lot of these parts are bare metal and I want to paint them. I'm gonna do something a little flashy, try and get some sort of color underneath this thing. Try not to make it too tacky, but you know, have some accents and kind of make it stand out a little bit at least, right? Got to make it cool. So we're gonna start doing that. And since I'm still waiting on springs, obviously I don't want to wait until the springs are here, then paint everything, and then I'm waiting on paint and waiting for things to dry before I can install, and it'd just be a mess. So try to pace myself a little bit, you know. So we're gonna start painting this stuff probably tomorrow because it's dark out now and I want to do all this outside. I don't want all this overspray everywhere. And then yeah, so that's everything. I'll go over the truck just a little bit right here too, just so you can see the condition of everything. So this is what we're working with. So the front end of this thing still is stock height, minus being worn down and probably sitting an inch lower than it should. And then the rear has custom springs put in it a long time ago because the guy I bought it from was using it for kind of as a work truck, and he was hauling a lot. He had a big dump trailer and he was probably putting a bunch of stuff in the bed itself. So he had some really heavy duty springs made for the rear, which lifted it up. So I think the rear, from what I've kind of measured and kind of tried to figure out, I think the rear sits about 3 inches tall. So my lift is gonna go 5 inches. So we're gonna add 2 inches of lift just in the rear, plus whatever the height of the 40-inch tires is gonna add. So I forget what that adds. It's something like 4 or 5 inches total. It'll be sitting taller, so not ridiculously big. And when we do this, we are going to be doing 40s with relatively small amount of lift, so we are going to have to do a lot of fender trimming. So hopefully people don't get too upset. This truck is not that great. It might look pretty decent in video here, but it's rougher than it looks. This is actually the better side. This side actually looks really good. There's no rust on this side. But no, it's not gonna hurt me to cut this thing up a little bit. The ultimate plans for trimming are gonna be, I'm gonna go below that piece down there. So I believe it's right about here. We're gonna cut the bottom of the fenders off all the way. And then we're gonna have to figure out how to cut the fenders out, make them look clean. Someday, probably not right away. I would actually like to blend this lip into the wider opening. I think I can do it. I have a plan for that, so hopefully that would work out. And then the rear is gonna need a little bit of trimming on the, I believe, front and rear edges. There you go, so it doesn't hurt so bad. There is a lot of rust coming through on these bed. This bed is in really bad shape. But yeah, it's all coming from inside there. I know there's trucks that are worse. And then for the rear trim, we're gonna go from the bottom of that sheet metal on the bed back there, and we're gonna carry that from, you know, basically right there all the way. Now the reason I'm trimming the bottoms of these fenders up a little bit is for when I do bumpers. So I want to get a lot of ground clearance, so we're gonna lose this bumper. We're taking this one off. And then when I'm trimmed up here, it's gonna be closer to where the frame actually is. Where is my frame? Frame's way up here. So I want it kind of be the same level as the frame because it's just unnecessary to have all this hanging down. I'm going to take off that huge rear tow receiver, so we'll gain all that clearance, all this clearance, and then we trim that off, and that'll be lots more clearance. So over here you can see how rusty things really are. You can see I'm missing lower part of my bed. This is probably all rotted out behind it. This corner has a hole. It got punched through and now it's rusting. So this is the bad side. So this is the side that makes me not feel so bad about cutting. The door is rotted out on the lower corner on the driver's side. Surprisingly, cab corners are still solid and rocker panels are still solid. So that's actually kind of nice. I don't have to worry about replacing those anytime soon. And then the front fender, obviously we'll be doing the front cut. And after we cut that, we're going to be doing custom bumpers. I want to get into tube bending and stuff like that. So I'll buy a tube bender. And then we'll make our own bumpers. We'll get rid of the big chrome bumper, the factory one. Probably can sell that one. That one's in really good shape. A lot of people like the hard to find blinker or turn signals in the bumper. Not all Chevys had that. Only these did because they didn't put the turn signal up top. Under the hood, this is my beloved 454. Hopefully this thing lasts. It's an old tired motor, I think. The cam bearings are really wore out. But we did a lot of work to this a couple years ago. You can see it kind of went to crap. It went into storage and water liked to puddle up on the intake on this thing in Washington State because everything condensates so much. The water just drips and gathers on everything. So it's just horrible on these engine components. So in this we did, I'm probably gonna miss something, but we did do a small camshaft. We did the comp cams 268, I believe. Extreme energy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then we did, at the same time, we did the intake, which is the Performer RPM. So we get a little bit more than the standard Performer. And then the biggest thing we did was the FI Tech. So we got fuel injection in this thing. I can't wait to get this thing all cleaned back up. Get these valve covers cleaned up. I did do roller tip rockers under there. Not the full, like, aluminum roller rockers. These are still I think they're made by Crane. I forget who it was. But it's the stamp style, but just has the roller tip. Some people say it doesn't make a single difference to it, but I did it anyways while I was putting in the new cam and lifters and all that. Oh yeah, the distributor, I put like a Summit Racing kit inside of the distributor to try and get rid of the factory emissions type timing that they put in these things. I don't know if that made a big difference or not, but it's in there. Plus I have an adjustable vacuum advance if I want to play with that. We did have to put a shiny new crankshaft pulley down there, but that's nothing fancy. I just had to do that because the old one was so banged up. These headers, I don't know what they are. They came with the truck. They're still solid, but they're pretty ugly and rusty. But as long as they work, we'll keep using them. One thing we're gonna do when I replace the steering box is I'm gonna replace the steering shaft too. Where am I pointing to? Oh, it's over here. This steering shaft back here. So we're gonna do a Jeep Cherokee XJ steering shaft. It's an upgrade a lot of guys are doing. It gets rid of, it's gonna get rid of this, I don't know what they call that, bell type joint. And it's gonna get rid of the infamous rag joint down at the bottom, that rubber, flat rubber joint that they like to use. And the Jeep Cherokee uses just a small U-joint style, real basic and simple. So that'll kind of clean things up under here and get you a more reliable system. Those rag joints are known to break and come apart, so don't want that happening. And since we're gonna have the brakes all tore apart too and everything needs to be bled and redone, I'm gonna replace this master. It works, but ever since I've bought it, it rusts so bad. It's like the brake fluid is just slowly leaching out of it, and brake fluid absorbs moisture and that causes really bad rust. So this thing has just been so nasty since I bought it. So now is a good time to, you know, since I gotta re-bleed everything and whatnot, I'm just gonna rip it off, put a fresh one on there, try to paint the new one maybe, clean it up a little bit. And this is a Hydro Boost truck. I don't know if that's good for off-roading or not. We'll find that out. No AC, so I got a nice clean firewall over here. Here's a look under the front axle. This is the Dana 44 that I got with the truck that I didn't know was in there. So finally, like, this has bugged me since I bought this truck. I can finally get rid of this thing, so that was kind of always a big thing. One thing that's interesting is it's not a flat knuckle. I thought this was going to be a flat knuckle Dana 44. It's not, so hopefully I can sell this thing to somebody that wants it. If not, it might end up being junk, but the flat knuckles are a little more desirable, so you can upgrade the steering a little easier on them. And you can see how wore out those front leaf springs are. What are these? These are 3 leaf springs, so I guess that would make it the 1-ton spring, I'm guessing. But these trucks always kind of have a negative arch to them. They actually ride better with a little negative arch than having a positive arch. But these are probably pretty wore out. Probably a little more than they should be. But overall, the frame is not in horrible shape. It's got a lot of minor rust to it and stuff that can clean up. I would like to try and put some fresh paint on things as I tear things apart and put them back together. So that would be kind of cool. Kind of looking at the middle of the truck here, you can see the rusty frame, but there is actually still some paint on the frame, which is nice. So it's not completely rotted out. You can see my exhaust that I've put under there. I'm going to redo that exhaust. I'm going to put Flowmasters under here and dump the exhaust probably under the bed, over the axle, or in front of the axle, whichever one works best. Someday I'm going to build, I would like, you know, when I do the tube work that I want to get into, I'll try to build like a whole cross member for the whole transmission transfer case area and cover all that, because that's kind of the lowest hanging point. You don't want to smash that on rocks too much, so we'll try to build a whole cradle with a skid plate to cover all that. And ideally I would like to actually push all that up into the frame more to really get it out of the way, but that might be a long ways down the road if we go that route. Another plan I have is, you notice these fuel tanks hang down real low. I got dual tanks on this thing, one on each side, and they both hang down that low, which is kind of a bad spot to be. So I'm gonna end up taking at least one of these tanks. I'm gonna remove both tanks, but at least one, if not both. I'm actually just gonna throw them, I'm gonna mount them inside the bed for now until I figure out how to do a fuel cell and do all that stuff and hide that in a better spot. But I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna actually mount the fuel tank in the bed and we'll plumb it out of there. It'll still run like factory, it'll work like factory, it'll be easy. And I'll gain all this ground clearance, so things won't get smashed. Important things won't get smashed so much. And one thing I'm gonna have to do when I lift this thing is I'm gonna have to do something about these drive shafts. They're gonna have to be most likely lengthened, modified, strengthened. We're gonna have to figure that out. So I'm probably gonna have to add a set of drive shafts, custom drive shafts to the list. And here we're looking at underneath the back of the truck. That's it's already got the factory full float 14 bolt, which is nice, and it has 410 gears, which is nice, and they do match the front, which is nice. So the 410s are nice, but we're going 456s because we're going bigger tires. Now you can see how fat those rear leaf springs are. Those are definitely not factory leaf springs. I'm not even gonna count how many leaves are in that. But this thing rides so stiff in the rear because of that, unless you really put some weight. But I've had, God, I think almost 2,000 pounds of scrap metal in the bed of this thing, and it barely squatted the rear end, but it rode nicer. And then obviously when they did that originally, they put, I believe those are Rancho shocks on there now, so it's got something at least. Looks good, looks kind of cool at this angle. You can see it's not in horrible shape. Thing's not rotted out completely. Looks like it used to have like a gooseneck or something in the bed. And the last thing we can talk about is these wheels and tires. Obviously these are not going to go back on the truck. These are horrible. These are 33, 12.5, 16.5 wheels. So the wheels are a non-desirable size. That 16.5 nobody uses anymore. There's a few tires out there, but it's not worth reusing them. And I have 3 of one wheel and a 4th one is mismatched, only in the depth of the width of the wheel. I think 3 of the wheels are 10-inch wide and then 1 is 8-inch wide. Trying to look at them now if this is the 10. I think this must be the 10-inch wide one here on this side. So this side matches. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go 40-inch tires, and then I wanna do full aluminum bead locks on this to really make it stand out. They're expensive, but it'll really make it pop, and that's kind of, to me, that's gonna make the whole outside of the truck. It'll let people know that this thing's serious. It's not just a lifted Chevy. And for that wheel, I want to go with a company called Battleborn Wheels, I believe they go by. It's a local company just down the highway from me. I think in Fallon. I think they're located. They only make a couple wheels, but they're making some pretty hardcore bead locks right now, and they look pretty cool. So I want to get together with them and try and see what we can work out. It'd be great. So yeah, I think that kind of covers everything. that's our plans, that's our hopes. This weekend I'm gonna start painting. I'm probably gonna start tearing this thing down soon too, with either this weekend if I get bored, or next weekend or weekend after, I don't know. Within the next couple weeks, I wanna start tearing it apart. And then when I put it back together, I'm trying to get my buddy Hovig out here to kind of help with the heavy stuff. You know, he's still up in Washington, so see if we can get him down here for a weekend or something. And you know, that way he can help me get leaf springs in, get some axles under it and stuff like that, and make some good progress without me having to do it all by myself with jacks. And it's such a pain in the butt trying to do a lot of this heavy stuff by yourself, but you can get it done. It just takes a little longer. With that, I'm gonna sign off. Please help me out if you're still watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, because we need all the help we can get. It really helps me a lot. Just every single one you guys do, it really helps. So I appreciate it. And then stay tuned for the next one.